everybody. Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. I want to thank everybody for showing up to the October meeting of City Island Rising. Give yourselves a round of applause because you all showed up and it's a pretty decent turnout. Again, I know everyone's here for the panel, and I know we have people who are still coming for the panel as well. And we're going to do introductions. An important thing when we have the elections coming up soon, the November general election, is that everyone's also got to be a good citizen. So we've been able to kind of put together an agenda. We're going to keep it very quick on general matters, and by 8 o'clock, even before, preferably, we're going to have a whole hour with this panel here because you have some real star power and know-how from these folks right here, and I know you want to get more from them than me. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to start first, as I said earlier, with citizenship. How many people, everyone here knows that about the elections on the first Tuesday of the month? It's November 5th? It is. November 5th. Everyone here is familiar with that? Yes. And while there are many elections, local elections that are uncontested, you're actually going to have 5 different ballot propositions on the ballot this year. Yes, no, yes, no. And the one that has gotten the most attention, and the one that is possibly the most controversial, is one that is about how we vote, and it deals with the subject of ranked choice voting. So before you leave, we actually have a box. It's the New York City Voter Guide. I know it came to a lot of people in the mail, but if you didn't get it, we have copies for you right here. If you have a few that you want to give your friends, you can give it to them. But the purpose is that we want everyone to get out and vote. One of the reasons City Island gets a lot of attention and a lot of resources that it deserves is because people here do vote, and everyone should be very proud of that. And we want to present arguments, both for and against. There wasn't anyone from the against side, so kudos to the only person who reached out who wanted to show up on the pro side. Let's give a hand to Michael Belzer from Ranked Choice NYC. Michael, take the mic.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Belzer, like Seltzer with a B. And can I get a show of hands? How many people in here have voted before? All right. Now, how many people in here have more than one candidate in the race? Right? So every time that we go to vote, we're being forced to make a decision of just choosing one person. And right now we vote under a winner-take-all system. So we vote for one person. That person doesn't necessarily need to get a majority of the vote to win. So under ranked choice voting, it seeks to eliminate that by having you rank up to 5 people in order from 1 to 5. And if the first place person doesn't get a majority of the vote, the last place person is eliminated, and those voters' second choice gets the vote. So what this has been used, what
louder for you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I don't like really using the
No worries.
So this has been used in places like Oakland, San Francisco, Minneapolis, the whole state of Maine, Australia, and what's been shown is that candidates actually focus more on the issues as opposed to individual candidates. So you have to win with the majority. So you have to go out to different communities and make sure that those people, everybody's hearing your message, because if you don't, you're not going to get over 50% in the first round, and you might not make it through a second or third round. So a lot of places have seen elections that elected officials win with 30, 40% of the vote. A lot of the times that means there's 60, 70% of the people that actually didn't like that person. Or we were forced to make a choice of who we believe is going to win the election as opposed to who we actually elect. So it's going to be on the ballot as question number 1. We have 5 ballot proposals that are for changing the city's charter, which is like the city's constitution. So there's actually 19 different things that we're changing in the charter. They're grouped together in 5 questions. Question number 1 has to do with elections. So it's ranked choice voting. So if you like the ranked choice voting system, you're voting yes on number 1, ranking up to 5 candidates. It also has some small changes doing to New York State election law in terms of special elections and redistricting, just to get things in line with New York State election law and give better time for overseas ballots, military ballots, things like that. So if I have some time, I can take some questions.
Yeah, let's just stick to 2 questions, if that's okay, everybody. We're also going to pass these out. These are question forms. Since we have a front-loaded agenda tonight, everybody, if you have a question and doesn't get answered, give these forms to me at the end.
and we will actually email the guests with your email to get you an answer. Because when you guys show up, we want interactive dialogue. We've had some front-loaded agendas. So these are going to be going around. If you don't get to ask Michael a question or any panel guest or Marianne about the landfill or anything, fill out one of these questionnaires. So you have to leave early. Fill this out and make sure it gets back to me. All right, go ahead. Sorry, Bock, go ahead.
My question is just a clarification. This is for special elections and primaries, not for the regular.
Right, very, sorry I didn't mention that. So yes, for primaries and special elections only, for any party, and it's only for New York City municipal elections, meaning mayor, controller, public advocate, borough president, and city council. So if we vote for this voting system, which is yes on question number 1, on November 5th, you can start voting early this Saturday. That'll start in 2021 as a new voting system.
Okay. All right, thank you, Michael. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay, and again, everybody, you have the questions are going around, so I'm sorry. The questions are going around, so if you have, get a question form, fill it out, make it clear who your question is to, and again, give them to me at the end. We want to get you guys some answers to your questions, and I've noticed that at some of these events, unfortunately, sometimes we only get a few questions, and I see people with their hands up, and they get frustrated. So we're trying to be more interactive, and we're trying to get you guys answers to the questions you want. So this way, if anyone has a question, and you don't get called on, the discussion keeps going. All right, second item on the agenda is Kim Woodruff. She's going to explain a measure that we're looking for support on with participatory budgeting.
Hi, everyone. So right now, participatory budgeting is going on, which means that anybody in the community can submit a proposal for what they think needs to be a priority for budgeting. And these are capital requests, so basically something that you can put money into once, and that's how much it costs, not things that kind of go on forever. So the thing that I would like to see, and that the City Island Rising Board has been looking into, is trying to get capital improvements on our playgrounds and our Ambrosino field. So right now, our playgrounds, if anybody has been there recently at PS 175, is not the most appealing playground environment. We have some temporary classroom units that are going to be removed. In the commitment is that they're going to be removed in 2020, so those should be removed in the coming months. And when they're removed, there's going to be a vacant area in the playground at the school. So that needs to be addressed at that time. Another issue we have is that right now people kind of go to the playground at after hours, and sometimes there's not so great things going on there. And so what's happened is that the playground is locked at night. So after school hours, the playground can no longer be used. That means that any basketball courts, handball courts, anything like that after about 2:30, 3 o'clock is no longer available to kids. So what we'd like to see is a program called Playgrounds, Parks to Playgrounds, which takes a playground that's a school playground and makes it a public park after school hours. So during school hours, it continues to have its primary function, but it makes it so that after school hours, it's a public park. And as part of this, the park gets renovated and improved. So one, we'd like to see our park renovated and improved because it's been a long time. It's not in the best condition. Our basketball court has kind of old, rusty basketball nets and boards and stuff like that. So we'd like to see it improved. We'd like to see the entire Ambrosino field and the park area looked at holistically. What on City Island do we need for recreation? That's really our only recreation area, so what can we do to make it better for the whole community, not just, saying let's use this only for during school, and then at the end of the day, it's kind of wasted area that no one can go to. And then just kind of trying to make the whole place more secure so that it can be used after hours as well. So if it becomes a park, then it's under the jurisdiction of the parks after those times, so it can remain open after the hours and be open during normal park times. So Ambrosino Field Park can be open till, the hours vary, but based on season, but usually 8 or 9 o'clock, dusk, but the school ground gets closed, and that's what we're trying to correct. So we're trying to kind of fix all those things. So if you think this is a good idea, and I hope you do, then I hope that you will go on to the website, and John, you have,
It's on our Facebook page.
it's on our Facebook page.
We'll share it again
And, we can show you on our phones at the end, and it's very easy to just go on there and say that you like this idea. But the other thing is that if you have a great idea, please go on the website and propose your idea as well, and let us know what kind of ideas that you have, because this is our chance to say, these are the kind of things that we want in our community to be prioritized, and the councilmen will look at it and decide what they're going to do, and we really, really hope that they will look at our playground and say that it's a good idea. Participatory
Oh, participatory, are you talking about the playgrounds to schoolyards, right?
school, yeah,
Yeah.
it's schoolyards, the playgrounds is the program, and participatory budgeting is the funding program. Any questions?
So if the schoolyard becomes part of the park, will they come in and close it at dusk or at a certain hour?
Right, so they're responsible, the responsibility basically shifts.
Do they have people who come into the neighborhoods to lock and close a yard like that?
Tim, if I may for a
I mean,
second.
I know obviously.
There are other, there's other parks that are kind of follow this model, so it's not a model that we made up, it's a model that
No, I
actually.
understand that, I'm not saying you're making it up.
And
but I
not
mean-
only that, but they close the gates of Ambrosini Field at dusk anyway, so.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a dramatic, logistical, hurdle for
Yeah,
us.
because right now, the two
No, I-
things are treated like
absolutely.
two separate things.
Yeah.
And if we could kind of look at them and say, a lot of it is because we're gonna be, I mean, the park, Ambrosini Field needs some loving, and the schoolyard also needs some loving, and we're gonna be taking these TCUs out, so that's gonna kind of compound the issue a little bit. So what we'd like to see is somebody to look at it and say, what can we do to have it so that City Island has a nice recreation area for all to use?
And it kind of hinges on, Ambrosini Field has a lot of drainage issues. So currently, the Little League has been sort of managing that as best as they could. Except if there was a budget for it, they'd have clay and stuff that would make those logistics considerably easier. In addition to the rest of the basketball court being open, so she was trying to make it like one piece instead.
Right, exactly,
Little
looking at it
subcategories.
holistically rather than two separate things. Because right now, we have Ambrosini Field has baseball fields. So we have baseball fields that are open to the public. But if kids want to play basketball, they can only play basketball at the school playground. So if the school playground is closed, they can't play basketball. I don't know about you, but I want our kids playing basketball, and I'd like that to be done in an environment that's secure. So security is obviously a concern, but we want kids to have things to do, and we want the community to have a nice place to get together and do recreation.
If everyone's okay with it, because I agree with Kim's idea as well, I'm just gonna make a motion that as an organization of all of us, that we write a letter of support that we'll send to Councilman Jonah, since he's leading this initiative, that our support would be behind the schoolyard to playground program for Ambrosini Field and the PS 175 schoolyard. So I'm gonna make the motion. Can I have a second? Maria Swizicki's the second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, thank you very much. The ayes have it. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. Thank you, and also I'm gonna apologize, and I'm gonna go over this a little bit because I don't wanna upset your ears right there. We've actually, tonight, I meant to put them on first, but we got a little carried away. We've had a host here tonight who's lent us this space totally free of charge. And the least we can do for them is to, let them come up and greet everybody who's here. And please, before and after the meeting, the bar downstairs is going to be open. Show them some support if you can, because we're always doing these in places of business to support small business. So Peter, if you'd like to come up here and say a few words, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, sir.
First of all, my name is Peter Trunfield, and I'm the Commodore Yacht Club. We had yesterday just celebrated our 136th anniversary. And I had to check, but I think our first clubhouse on this site was purchased 125 years ago. So I can't be sure. Someone in the audience will correct me if I'm wrong, but that may make us one of the longest continuous operating venture on the island. It's a responsibility that we take very seriously. You know, being a sort of I hope, a pillar of the community. I just wanted to say welcome to the Harlem Yacht Club, and we are happy to support the cause however we can.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
I think the consensus, if you ever want to come down and have a cocktail.
it. Yeah.
And dinner tonight.
And dinner.
And dinner, yeah, please come here for
And
dinner.
dinner, because we always come for sunset
wonderful.
and appetizers.
So, yeah, no, definitely come here and support the cause. And again, we promise we're gonna get through the agenda tonight. It's moving very quickly because we want as much time on the panel and the topics at hand as possible. One thing, we are gonna have Matt Cruz join us. He's the district manager of Community Board 10. He is stuck in a little traffic. He's stuck actually at the bridge. He just sent me a nice photo from there. One of the things we want to do, though, is that the community board, which is an advisory body made up of residents of City Island, Co-op City, Country Club, Pelham Bay, Throgs Neck, and Westchester Square, is they make a series of advisory opinions. And one of the ones they do is is a district needs statement. So basically what they do is they write up a list that's dozens of pages of things in the community that the community wants. And I will tell you, having worked for an elected official, and I'm sure Rose would feel the same way when she worked for an elected official, the elected officials look over these lists when they get member item funding or capital funding to see what the community wants. Actually, the Pelham Bay Dog Run, that was on a list back from CB10 10 years ago and got picked up, and Senator Klein funded that, and as a result, there's a dog run now in Pelham Bay Park. So these things do get picked up from time to time. Unfortunately, we found out about it last week. So as a result of finding out about it last week, it's kind of a rush to submit suggestions. And Matt will be here in a little bit as well, so you can always speak to him on the side if your suggestion's not included. And we can always work to include it next year. Again, this is a wish list advisory, but we want to make sure City Island's very well represented. So I'm just going to, read out some very basic points. It's on the back of your list here, because we want all of City Island's, points to be included here. And basically, the playground schoolyard program that Kim explained, teen programming, obviously, we know that's a concern here. Drainage in certain places we've spoken about before. A pier at Belden Point, a wooden barrier in the circle of Rodman's Neck, a dedicated NYPD harbor patrol for the summer months, a dog run, water testing of Eastchester Bay, which I know some of our guests are already involved in. We're also going to ask the City Island Library that they begin to examine the second floor, because it was always designed to eventually go up to a second floor. That's why it's built. That's why it's built the way it is. Putting the electrical lines underground, so every time we have a windy night, you don't lose cable and maybe your power. Rodman's Neck, because there's going to need to be more funding for Rodman's Neck. And by the way, anyone over here, you're welcome to sit down over here. We have some chairs for you. An Orchard Beach ferry, because we're going to push for a ferry in all forms of transportation, any which way we can. And the, what? I'm sorry, what was that? The ferry would be from Orchard Beach to down in Manhattan. They would park in the parking lot at Orchard Beach. I'm sorry? I mean, that can be worked out. Again, this is just a wish list. This isn't the final determination. That could be worked out. They could build a multi-tiered parking lot, but the point is, there are people on City Island who have a concern about parking if it was put right here, but if it's in Orchard Beach, there's a parking lot with thousands of spots, and it would serve City Island, Co-op City, Country Club, Pelham Bay. So it's kind of in a way, sometimes we have to realize we're only 4,500 people, and if we partner with other communities, we can get more things done. And then the final one is an additional permitting or storm protection measures for City Island. This is just... take a few questions now.
So the way that we do the limited public access is we have different
tours throughout the year that the Rangers lead. So they basically go online. We just had one, I think, at the beginning of October. Sometimes we have groups that could reach out to us. I know Hutchinson River Restoration reached out to us one year. We just did a tour with them. I just want to make sure that there's always a parking with whatever, birding group or whoever wants to kind of come up onto the landfill. But eventually, it would be really great.
So if we as an organization wanted to organize a tour, would we contact you?
Yeah, just contact me.
Anyone interested in going?
Yeah. And right now, there's like this big group of rangers that we got through the Playfair campaign, so we have like a lot of, we can do some extra programming, so it's good time.
Cool, so if you want to just either leave us your name or shoot us an email,
Yeah.
we'll try to set something up.
That'd be great.
If the water was tested that's leaching from there, been okay?
To go into the sewers.
Yeah, in terms of striped bass or fishing in that area, is that, what, those fish, or that been tested? In terms of,
I mean, I'm just talking about the landfill per se, but probably the experts that we have at the table can talk better about the water quality.
obviously right across the street from the golf course, it's a pretty big striped bass fly fishing area.
Right.
Most of those guys are catching least, so it doesn't much matter. But I have seen more people fishing even around the bridge, whatever, and just like to know that the fish are not glowing.
I haven't seen it. That's a fair point.
And can we get a ski slope on that?
Jane,
We tried that in the 60s in Vancouver.
Which is pretty,
Jane,
Still producing methane?
Not enough to light the gas flare, but you see the big tank. Not enough to do it like 24/7, but yes, it's still
And
producing
the
very.
meat is still leaching, or they're still testing the leaching?
They're still doing all the testing. Over the 6 years, they've worked with the state to actually broaden the testing, so broaden the time frame. So if they were doing it like monthly, now it's like maybe every 3 months, because they weren't really picking up a lot of.
And what are they finding?
I couldn't really answer that now. I have to go, find some notes, but I can let you know. Yeah, sure.
Do you know what's actually in the leachate? Are we talking about like heavy metals or what?
I don't, but I can get that information.
get that information. This is, again, we're gonna go on the tour. I hope everybody can come on the tour. That's a
Yeah.
great suggestion, Dan. And we're
And
gonna
it's,
keep.
the park isn't all about the landfill, so if anybody has any questions, after the panel, please.
Yeah.
Next question about the parking lot. So, if we're kind of pushing for a ferry, which on the surface sounds like a pretty good idea, using that parking lot during the day. Obviously, the parking lot is closed at sunset for anybody who leaves City Island goes that way, there's a cop there, it's not perfect. Are they then gonna fence in the rest of the park and have the parking lot open for people to come back and forth?
There'd be a lot of. There would be a lot of back and forth and
discussion
Yeah,
about how that would
this
work.
is just a wish list to show that certain things are priorities, and ferry service is a priority for many people, young professionals. Yeah, your son is one of them, and, it's just about getting as a chart, just to advance the idea. That's all we're trying to
The
do.
other issue is that the concessionaire uses the parking lot from Memorial
Yeah.
Day to Labor Day, so that's.
Yeah, that would be a
issue. So
logistical.
all those things would have to.
Of course.
Yeah, but I mean, how much of that parking lot is used during the day, during the week?
During the week,
Concession,
maybe.
it's a huge parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, is that parking lot ever?
It used to be, remember they used to turn it away.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think many people go to the beach anymore, they go and stay here.
It's beautiful.
should go.
You should go to Orchard Beach, it's
But
beautiful.
yeah.
They only go off season.
They did a whole sand replacement there about 5 years ago.
2011.
Yeah, so not 8 years ago. And it's really, if you haven't been there in a number of years, go to Orchard Beach.
They
It's
even,
well worth the
they
time.
even redid the concessions and stuff in that area,
And
that whole thing
we
is
have a
really.
$60+ million project just to the pavilion, but it's
Yeah.
only part of the pavilion, so we still need more money.
You gotta be there. So thank you, Marianne. And again, Marianne's gonna be on the panel, so more questions, you have the forms. If you have more questions, then you can ask her on the panel. So we're gonna keep this moving forward here. So with that in mind, I'm just gonna quickly introduce the panel, and then I'm gonna turn it over to David. David's gonna lead the entire discussion. So, don't worry, Dave. You'll be good.
Because I was supposed to do that too.
Oh, I know, no, there we go. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. He can't help himself.
It's Mike Dulong, Mike Dulong from Riverkeeper, if you could just wave or something so they know, so stand would be fine. Peter Linderoth, Water Quality Programs from Safe to Sound.
Elana Colón, environmental analyst from Save the Sound. Jenny Bock, Friends of the Earth, United States. Marianne Anderson, who you know. And Matt Cruz, who's the district manager of Community Board 10. All right, thank you all.
All right, guys, so what I'd like for you guys to do, if you can, just within, a very brief and top, I know it's hard, but just to kind of introduce yourselves, let me know what your organization does, and then we can maybe open up to some questions and things of that nature, if that's okay.
Much time at the end.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Mike Dulong from Hudson Riverkeeper. We protect the Hudson River from New York Bay all the way up to Albany and beyond. We also protect New York City drinking water. We have a boat that goes up and down the river looking for polluters. We do a lot of policy work in New York State and a lot of water quality sampling. We actually sample all the way to the Whitestone, I think, and then we pass it off to our friends at Save the Sound.
Love what they do. Hello, I'm Jenny Bock. I'm with Friends of the Earth US, and I'm from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, so way different part of the waterfront New York. And Friends of the Earth, we are a national and international environmental nonprofit. We have partner Friends of the Earth groups all over the world, 70 different countries, from Nigeria to the Netherlands to Japan to Ecuador, and in the U.S. we work a lot on federal environmental and climate policies, and we really believe that it's important to address environmental issues by connecting, how they are related to social, racial, economic issues, and we have been working a lot on the Green New Deal on the national level, supporting the state level Green New Deal. And a lot of our work is focused on members of Congress and pushing them to support strong climate policies. And we do a lot of lobbying. David's one of our star lobbyists, so yeah.
Great, thank you. Peter Linderoth with Save the Sound, and as the name implies, we're out to save the sound, but also protect, restore it, maintain it. I grew up on Long Island Sound, and I just gotta say I love being with Save the Sound. I've been there for about 5 years. I personally oversee our water quality monitoring program. But we have lots of different facets involved in our work. We have a legal department that I work with. We all work together. Advocacy, we're up in Albany, we're up in Hartford. Really, we extend not just on the water in the Sound, which, Elana and I do a lot of, but we work in the entire Long Island Sound watershed, which is tremendously large, as you all know, going all the way up to Canada. And really just all about Long Island Sound, all about protecting it and preserving it.
I'm Elana Colón, and the environmental analyst, and often I am out in the field or in the lab processing samples or analyzing the data. So you might see me out on the boat in East Chester Bay or running around collecting bacteria samples on the Hutchinson. I'm all over the place around here. So say hi, or you see me on the boat, Save the Sound really big on it. But that's, yeah.
Great. I'll save my spiel for much later. My name is Matt Cruz from Community Board 10. I'm the district manager. Happy to be here with Seattle Rising. Good luck to all of you. And I guess about a half hour or so, I'll start talking about what we're up to at Community Board 10.
All right, thank you guys. So, one of the reasons why we got you guys here together, right? Because we are a frontline community, and we are experiencing climate change at all kinds of different ways. And so we put some questions together, right? And I'm going to throw out some of the questions that you guys can all kind of, jump in wherever you like, all right? One of the things that I guess there is this sort of fog sometimes when it comes around the Green New Deal, when it comes around climate change and what really is happening, right? So when it comes to resiliency, how can we become prepared? How do we advocate for projects that protect our coastline? We also have flooding issues here in the streets and parks. So what are some of the things that we could do?
Right, that's going to be a big challenge we're all going to be facing along the Long Island Sound coastline, but specifically in this area, I'm not sure if you're all aware, but there's an Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study that's going on. There's actually a public meeting that just wrapped up. I think it was tonight. Our director was there, and it has a lot to do with storm surge barriers and different ways of protecting the coastline. And if I could just express one important thing for you all in the room is to show up to those public meetings. Don't worry, there's going to be many, many more of them. It's a massive project that's happening or being studied. But show up and voice your opinions. Let people know, your situation in City Island and make sure to voice your opinions to the people that are going to be making these decisions. We did send around an email list. If you sign up to this, one thing that I must say Save the Sound is pretty good at is taking pretty big issues and distilling them down to people so we can give bulleted points and the important meeting dates and important points that you all should be following. So please sign up and follow that Army Corps of Engineers project. It's got a big long name, but what is it, Matt? Do you know what it is, Matt? New York, New Jersey, tributary Ninja Hats.
Harbor and tributaries.
Sound.
So the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Tributary Study, Ninja Hats, for short. And there are a couple ways it would affect City Island. One is there would be, one of the alternatives they're studying is to put a barrier underneath the Frog's Neck Bridge, or just west of the Frog's Neck Bridge. And they would put one across the Hutchinson River at Pelham Bay Bridge. And so they would close those at times of storm surge, trying to protect what's behind it. Well, City Island's not behind it, City Island's in front of it. So one of the concerns is splashback, or potentially inducing more flooding in an area like this. And so what they're gonna do with an area like this isn't determined yet, and that's why you have to be there voicing your opinion, submit written comments, submit oral comments, yell at them if you want to. We do sometimes. Yes, they have to hear from you. Another problem is they're studying storm surge. They're not studying sea level rise. And so when you think about blue sky flooding, if they're seeing a lot of the rockaways, you can see some here that I'm unaware of.
We actually have a lot of flooding on the low end of the island on the bad rains and high tide.
Right, so
We have a lot, so like at the beginning of the island, actually the street that we're on.
This is the lowest. This street gets water. You can't come out of your house. It's
Right.
the lowest.
And so it was, I know this was flooded during Sandy, I know I'm sure it floods all the time. So in just this decade, you're looking at between 4 and 11 inches of sea level rise. So that's 4 and 11 inches every single time that happens. By the 2050s, you're looking at maybe 11 to 21 inches, and those are the New York City climate panel numbers. So it's going to get worse. So what is going to happen to this island? Obviously important. I can talk a little more about what we can do about that and how you can get involved. This is one way. Definitely go to those meetings, show up, send your comments, send your knowledge of your area so that they can consider it in their decision making.
And how do we know about those meetings? What are they specifically about?
So if you sign up for, Save the Sound has their list today.
There it is. You can sign up on us today.
You can sign up for Save the Sound.
We partner up on projects on.
Yes, Riverkeeper also submits or gives that information out to the public. We will let you know when those meetings are going on. We'll also let you know when other things are happening in your area.
Because we primarily came to this meeting to see what we could do, but we never thought of other communities plotting against us. I mean, not that they're plotting against us, but doing something that would harm us. Yeah.
It's not just other communities, it's the federal government, right?
Yeah.
It's the federal government. And there was a meeting today that I made the decision not to go, I'm here, but.
And you know what, can I have that for a second? It's gonna be ongoing, so just don't feel like you missed the meeting. It's not a small issue. There's gonna be multiple meetings, but just definitely stay tuned. And part of the feasibility study is looking at the economics of it all, but really, you're all people, you're a community. So as Matt said, and we couldn't encourage you any more than he has just now, but please show up to those meetings. Get involved with Riverkeeper and Save the Sound. It's free. We'll help you guys we'll help all of you find those meetings. And we can give you, you know, in some cases we even provide some basic talking points that you're welcome to use or not, and to get up and actually publicly say things. If you're comfortable doing so, you can also put it in writing.
Yeah, we've started an organization here on City Island called the City Island Oyster Reef. I don't know if you've heard anything about it.
Yeah, I've been talking with a few of the professors working on it.
Oh,
Heike, Nuremberger, and a couple other ones, yeah.
Oh, that's it. So, I don't know how our organization can get some support and help from Save the Sound, because obviously that's our goal. And in terms of the Riverkeeper, we have problems with the Hutchinson River and how it drains into our Eastchester Bay and the quality of the water because of that. And so we need to know how to better organize in terms of those things, because it's the water quality that kills the oysters that kills the oyster reefs, that stops the storm surges, as well as other things, so.
Let's jump ahead in the
Yeah,
question.
no, actually, that's funny.
No, I just actually want to point out, Carla.
Oh, good. Where's Carl?
Yes, hi, here.
Hey, nice to see you. Yeah.
And Marianne. Just had to clean up. Yeah, I'm Carl Lundgren. I'm the treasurer now of the Hutchinson River Restoration Project. And one of the things I want to address here is if you do want to get involved with Save the Sound through City Island, we're the group to do it. Matt Umbro, who is our vice president of HRRP, works closely with Peter. And we've also worked with Riverkeeper over the years too. So we're a lot more than just a cleanup. There's a lot more that we've been doing, a lot more that we're involved in. As a matter of fact, Matt is at the was at the Great Neck meeting tonight. We're also getting involved now with the study, the harbor study. Elana Ray, who's the president, she and I attended the community meeting at Hostos College back in April, and we had to lay the law down to them a little. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers itself has mistakes within the study. One of the things saying that the Thomas Pell Wildlife Sanctuary is in the Bronx River. And we had to point that out to them, and they said, well, thank you very much, we'll correct that mistake. Who knows what other mistakes they have there. So that we do have to stay on top of this, and as people have said, you do have to attend these meetings and try to get familiar with the issue. One of the things I've done here, I have a sign-up sheet here for the Hutch to get you on our mailing list so that you can be informed about what we're doing. I'm also the media coordinator, the social media coordinator. So I try to make sure that I have studies and all those things up on our website, which is www.hrrp.org. We just changed that. We're also on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. So we really would love to have more people from City Island, especially City Island, involved since we are based here.
Hey, I have one question for all of us. So now we're getting a whole lot of information on all these organizations. Is there any way of coordinating one summary sheet that says, hey, this is what we discussed, and here are the organizations that you should be
We
involved
can definitely do that. Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. All right, so that kind of leads into the next question, which is regarding the water quality, right? Chesapeake Bay here has always been highly polluted. The Hutchinson River, again, also very highly polluted. What steps can we take, right? And I guess going into that, what steps can we take to kind of really fight for that improvement, right? So we all sign up for all these different things, right? I think that's actually a big part of it. Is there anything else that we can do?
Take that first.
All we do is water. So, yeah, the Hutch is really bad up there. There's the head end of the Hutchinson River, white water coming out of that. It's gross, it smells, you can't breathe. That's sewage. I mean, there's legacy contamination there, but most of the issue right now is sewage coming from the New York City combined sewer overflow system. So raw sewage pouring into there. The city has a plan to deal with that sewage, which is mostly to just let it continue coming. They're going to put a little bit of green infrastructure in. They're going to capture, which will mean a little bit less rainwater, will cause a little bit less overflow. And they are going to shunt some of the water. So some of the sewage is going to come right into the head end, to the delta, basically by Pelham Bay Bridge. And so 30 million gallons extra is going to come right into Pelham Bay. There's a plan now called the Citywide East River Open Waters Long-Term Control Plan. And it's what the city's going to do for almost every single waterway, big waterway in New York. We're talking Harlem River, Hudson River, East River, western portion of Long Island Sound, and all the way down to the Bay. So all these major waterways, the city is planning what to do about all the sewage going into the water. So 11 billion gallons a year, it's a massive amount of sewage overflow. So what happens in Pelham Bay is part of that plan. And one of the things that people are asking for is for them to look specifically at smaller waters within that. So places like Bushwick Inlet. It's a small area where part of the big, we can't do anything, it's too expensive. So advocating for your waterways, one of the things that Riverkeeper is doing is making sure they're looking at every little waterway. But advocating for your waterway is important. And so this process is going on now. There's an open comment period now. There will be meetings over the coming weeks. We, Save the Sound and Riverkeeper, attend all these meetings, and so we are fighting for water quality. But we invite you to join our lists so that you can find out about these meetings and come and voice your concerns about your water.
Maybe a little add to that too. And then I won't hog the mic so much now. We gotta kick it over to some others. Well, yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the long-term control plans. That's very having to do that. That's a very complex issue that we're partnering with Riverkeeper and lots of other groups on. Definitely get involved with that. But I think it also is important to mention Mount Vernon. Some people are probably aware of the issues Mount Vernon's having. There's a current lawsuit between, he's more of the attorney than me, but I think it's the Department of Justice in New York versus Mount Vernon for violations of their stormwater permit going all the way back to 2012. So that's a big deal. We monitor the waters in the Hutch. We have 4 locations that we monitor weekly for 10 weeks, and they're showing terrible results in terms of fecal indicator bacteria. Basically, we're monitoring outfalls where stormwater should be coming out, which has its own host of problems, but we're finding hits that are showing raw sewage. And we have a really wonderful core of volunteers that help us out with that, a citizen science corps. And we welcome everyone in this room to contact us and get involved. Elana would love that, coordinating all of you. But I'll tell you what, if you get out and you start participating in the monitoring and you get on the water and you see these issues firsthand, it really helps sink it home. We're always going to advocate for you to go out to the meetings and go and talk and express your opinions. But Riverkeeper does this as well. But as Matt mentioned, we're sort of east of the Whitestone Rocks neck. So we have our stations in the Hutch. We actually have 62 locations that we monitor, but we have 4 in the Hutch. And I'd really love if we could snag maybe a half dozen of you all to participate in that so you can see these issues firsthand and know that we're tracking them as well.
Sure. I just wanted to chime into the first question and then piggyback towards the water quality. I'm looking more, as district manager, and we kind of liaise with other city agencies and sometimes the state, the federal, in some cases when we need to. And I think John may have touched on it earlier in his remarks, Mr. Doyle, with regard to our district needs statement. Very rarely do we get the public's input in our district needs statement, and I'll go over what that is much later on. But if someone were to request of us to place in our district needs a water quality study,
It's in there.
that would be a item we can include, which I think John already has already. And second, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe the city has done a city island resiliency project.
Yeah, so
like they've done in Hunts Point and other communities.
you're absolutely right. We had an issue. There was a group called New York Rising, and it had no affiliation with this group, but it was the governor allocated $4.5 million to resiliency projects. And I served on the panel. There were a few other people, another person from City Island. And we were supposed to come up with different projects that we would do. And one thing the group decided, which I think was right, is we didn't want to do any more studies. Because unfortunately, this area has a bad case. And we do these great studies, and then they go and they sit on the shelf of a library for 20 years. They get dusted off. Someone goes, oh, this looked really good. Let's do another study to show that the first study was right on the study. So we decided not to do that. So we decided to go into brick and mortar facilities. And one was Edgewater Park's Firehouse, which is happening now. The second was Locust Point's Civic Center, which got beset with infighting, and I don't think ever happened. And then the third was they were supposed to do coastal edge resiliency projects. And to my understanding, and I know Assemblyman Benedetto is looking into this, the money never flowed into some of these projects. Some of them were not found feasible. But there's about $3 million sitting around that we're going to be really pushing our elected officials to put into stuff for City Island, for Country Club, for some of the other neighborhoods that didn't get the brick and mortar facilities, which, we don't really have a community brick and mortar facility. You can't give it to a private facility. So we're really going to, and I'll work with you, of course, we're going to be really pushing the state. What happened to that $3 million after the firehouse? Because we need that here. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Do you guys do? Yeah, let me give that one. We actually don't. We do ambient water like this. I think you're on.
talk about resiliency planning, we shouldn't poo-poo planning completely, because the big U is happening in Manhattan. That was a big planning effort. Now it's actually going into place, and that's billions of dollars. So they're protecting Manhattan over there. They're not protecting every single community in New York City. There's 520 miles of coastline, it's an enormous amount of coastline. There's not a plan to deal with that. So there is no big U for City Island. There's no big U for the Bronx. There's no big U, really. I mean, Jamaica Bay is having some work done, but there is no comprehensive plan for the entire city. Next week, on Tuesday, there's going to be a hearing, it's a city council hearing on Intro 1620. It's a bill to create a plan for all 520 miles of coastline, including all this coastline around here. We think that's important. The council member for this district has not signed on yet. You could sign on if you would urge him to do so.
Oh, which one is it?
Jonah. So, right, this is in the city council. He hasn't signed on to it yet. Doesn't mean he's not supportive of it. It might just mean he doesn't know about it. So if he hears about it, he might be more inclined to sign on.
We'll reach out.
It's going to be the Environmental Protection Committee and the resiliency, the new resiliency.
Hi, I have a question. I live on Bay Street, a few blocks away. We have a very nice beach down at the end of the block that my 3 adult children use frequently. I'm also not only concerned as a mother, I'm a real estate agent here on City Island, and I often have clients, potential buyers, asking, oh, you know, is the water clean? Is it okay to swim in this water? And I've always said yes, because my kids always swim there, and they always said it was fine. And to be honest, now I'm starting to worry, not only about my kids, but am I telling my clients the truth? You know, I honestly felt that it was clean, but now I don't know.
Yeah, we can answer that. Planning can answer.
Thank you.
I got it. So one of the documents we brought with us, and one of the things that we put out, this one was somewhat new actually, is a Long Island Sound beach report. So it assigns grades to the over 200 beaches in Long Island Sound based on their fecal indicator bacteria data. There's a stretch of beaches that are in this report that are on that side of Eastchester Bay, kind of like your Dutch clubs and those other great little kind of sailing clubs that have beaches as well. So I'd highly recommend you take a look at this. And this is fueled by an online tool that we have called the Sound Health Explorer. So you can look at all this online, and you can basically look at 10 years of beach data at your beach. Orchard Beach actually happens to be one of the better beaches in this area. And you can look at all those data. It's actually a tool that we put together that scrapes data from a federal database that I can tell you, and Elana can tell you from experience, is rather difficult to get data out of. But it scrapes it all, puts it into one place so people can go and check on their local beach and see how it performs. It's not meant to be the day of type management tool, but it'll give you that 10-year retrospect. You can see all the sample values. You can see the geometric mean, which is essentially an average for your beach, and see how it stacks up against all the other beaches in Long Island Sound. And one of the thoughts on putting this together is that realtors and people that work in that can take this and say, hey, look at our beach, it's getting an F, I want a better beach, and take it to your elected officials and say, what can we do to make that happen?
Is it true that when it rains, because I've heard different stories, when it rains, the water is worse?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In this area, in Eastchester Bay and the Hutch, it's heavily impacted by what Matt was talking about, combined sewer overflows. So there's certain thresholds of rain where you have large pipes and culverts out there that all of a sudden, instead of just transporting stormwater, are transporting a bit of New York City's finest, including yours in a lot of cases, mixed with the stormwater and discharging it untreated into Eastchester Bay. So while the beaches in the bay might be clean during dry weather, I would definitely, and I think New York City DEP would get behind this too, they try their best to send out advisories. If you get a ½ inch of rain or a ½ inch of rain in kind of a short duration, there's a very strong chance that those outfalls are firing, meaning there's raw sewage coming out, and you should probably stay out of the water in terms of swimming.
Well, they're close to beach clubs as far as next.
Right, yeah, there's preemptive closures usually on precipitation.
Well, I mean, I'm aware of the fact that Marshall Beach Club has a health department visited, I think 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. And they do on occasion close out beaches. Of course. What is it in?
Morris is in here.
Okay, now, I don't think that information is given to the public, I mean, we know it because our beach is closed, but obviously, for people who do want to swim off their beaches, I can't imagine there's that much of a difference between a Mars Park is better flush than these places, so we should make that, we should try to get somebody to announce that on a regular basis, that, you know, there is water in the area not being tested and not passing muster. I don't know how to do that.
We just sued last week to make the city put up notices for these sewage discharges.
You just sued the city?
Just sued the city last week.
Good.
To do that.
I just want to mention that the Department of Health does test, weekly.
Is that announced? Are you aware of it being announced at all? I mean, you know, what's the sense of a city agency testing it and they're not putting it out to the public?
Where do you see it? It gets posted on the bulletin.
Yeah, I understand that, but, I mean.
I think it's more of a concern about.
All right, well, we'll look into that, it's a good point, let's just, we have a woman back here who's been asking a question for a
I can
while.
add to that too, if they get an exceedance of the value, the unfortunate thing about beach sampling and the sampling we do for bacteria is the results take a day. So they might be out at your beach at 10 a.m.
Right.
If they're getting the stuff in the lab by noon, which is unlikely, then the results aren't done until the next day at noon. But if they come back after it's basically a beach action value, I'll spare you the numbers, but if it comes back exceeded, the beach is closed typically until they can get under that value, and then they'll open it up again. So they're using it for management, but it's not always easy to find, and that's why we put together this beach report, so you can see those data.
Can you define management? I mean, you know, what does that mean? They're using it for management?
The Department of Health manages the beach closures at the beach.
Right.
So is there a safe rule of thumb?
Well,
I mean, is that a reason to say, like?
Yeah, don't swim after the rain.
Is that, I mean, how much rain is a problem?
How much rain
I
is
mean,
a
I
problem?
swim every day, I don't care, I'm alive, right? Like I always swim. And my kids don't swim. So, but is there, I don't care, I'm swimming in the rain, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, one second, one at a time. I can hear you, but there's some people talking in the front too.
But is there a real, like, ballpark rule of thumb, if it rains quarter of an inch, if it rains an inch, what's like a safe, like a loose guideline? I'm not gonna hold anybody to.
No, that's all right. I'm not, yeah, and I can't give you the exact number, but what I can tell you is that most beaches have a threshold and it's a preemptive closure. So, for example, and I know this doesn't help you, but I said that you need to look it up. In Marianne, where one of our offices is, Harbor Island Beach is a popular beach. If it rains more than a half inch within a certain amount of time, they preemptively close the beach. It's not open. You can't go on the beach. You can't swim. Just close.
So in essence, if we could find the closest practical beach that does research, we could piggyback on it.
Yeah, although there might, after the meeting, I'd be happy to talk to you. It might be easier than you think to find the area. I'd be happy to help you.
if this is the only moment you guys,
One at a time, but
let's just, miss, if you could stand up with the microphone, we'll just let you go. Okay, let's.
Can we monitor our own water? Is there a way for us to take samples and know for ourselves, citizen scientists?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, but I think Elana can answer that one.
Okay.
So, another aspect, another way you can help, if you do see what you suspect is pollution, sewage pollution, or an illicit discharge out of a storm outfall, you can always email me. Just take photos, note the time. If you can get coordinates off of your Google map, better, or just give me an address. I can't always promise that we can always take an immediate action and result every time.
She's talking about
We can take samples.
I think what she's talking about is having a kit on your own to be able to do it.
Well, sometimes we can, depending if there is evidence of ongoing sewage illicit discharge there, then we might set up exploratory sampling where we can talk it out. It would be dependent on the location and other details. And then sometimes we do that. We'll give you the bottles and we'll teach you how to collect the sample, and we'll just bring it back to our lab, or we coordinate and we can test it.
So this, the Oyster Reef project has citizen scientists that are trying to set up the testing of the water at this point.
I'd love to talk about the Oyster Reef project.
Yes, and we've already started a committee of people,
Yeah.
so we need to coordinate and put our science committee in touch with you, and we can do ongoing weekly testing of several spots around the island. We've already started.
That might. I don't really need the mic, but.
Just two quick questions. I guess I have a couple about this. Sorry. Just
about the sewage, in the water and the water quality in the rain. I've been under the impression that there is really a problem on the west side of the island, that a lot of those sewers, that there's a sort of an epidemic on the west side, a lot of those sewers just empty out. So I mean, it seems to be more on the west side than on the east side in the way that they were built along the side. So I guess it's not just, you know, like I used to live on Carroll Street Beach definitely had, you know, sewage discharge when it rained and things like that. And now I live on the east side of the island, right next to, you know, Hard Island, which, you know, then human remains have, you know, during, like, you know, Superstorm
I know, I
Sandy
tell
and all
those
that.
stories to our interns when I have them on the boat.
Right,
Sorry, not to make light.
exactly. You know, so I mean, there's definitely, you know, and then everything that's emptying into the rivers and things like that. There are definitely, so I mean, but in terms of, yeah, and also the Hard Island and the Parks Department, I know that it's being transferred. I mean, Riker's being shut down. It's being transferred to the Parks Department, right? I mean,
I know it's up for bill.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's gonna be voted on in the coming weeks. There's actually a meeting on that also tonight, so it was the Army Corps of Engineer, Hard Island,
Right.
that's what that was.
And in terms of the ferry, just real quick, where would the ferry be docking on Orchard Beach? Like, is there a ferry that could actually take, I mean, a dock that could take?
I know we've spoken about this a few times at other meetings, and it's fine, it's all available on YouTube. This is just a wish list to kind of drive a future discussion. It's not gonna be site placement, anything else. Again, the community board would be very involved in that, our elected officials. All we're trying to say is that we want to enjoy the same ferry service that's coming to Throgs Neck and other communities, that's all. But your points are well taken, and in a future date, we'll address them.
I just have a quick question. So I grew up on City Island, I played on those beaches as a child, and I remember there was starfish, ribbon worms, claw crabs, lobster, I mean, all kinds of different marine life, and I haven't seen that for years. Is it a result of the spraying for encephalitis in the early 2000s, or is it because of all the pollution and sewage in the water that caused a lot of this marine life to, it's not, I don't see it's not as available.
Well, certainly Long Island Sound went through a pretty, I won't even say ups and downs, it went through a long down period from the 80s, 70s, moving forward. This whole western section of the Sound pretty much died. There's stories about this area where lobsters were crawling out of the water because there was no oxygen in the water. Of course, it didn't help them crawl out of the water. I do see some marine life while we're out and about in this area, though. I think I do see some signs of hope. The middle of Long Island Sound in this area, even though it's still quite stressed, has shown statistical improvements. We're starting to see larger schools of fish, bunker, bait fish, which you all know, coming through, porpoises following in some cases. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing some more of those marine organisms along the shoreline where you're talking about soon. Of course, coastal impacts are different than the middle of the Sound. I wanted to get to two other things that were mentioned. One was but I wouldn't be surprised to see more marine life coming back. We're seeing whales coming back to the Sound. We're seeing dolphins. We're seeing larger schools of fish. We're seeing some good things.
You know, you're talking about what you see. I see the seals, I see the dolphin. There's the one rock off Orchard Beach that you don't see marine seals. So on one hand, you don't see one thing, but you see other life coming to the town.
Yeah. I think the Sound's going through a good recovery, the middle of the Sound especially. I wanted to get to your point about the, I think you're talking more about stormwater outfalls, so there might be some combined sewer outfalls on the west side of City Island. Please take my card, get in touch with me and Elana. We can help you with spot checks on those things and explain how to document the problem so we can help follow up. One of the things we do is when people report pollution to us, which is unique, I mean, we get paid to do this, right? So we go out and inspect it. If it's a problem, we'll get in touch with whoever's responsible, and we won't leave them alone. I send a lot of those emails. I set reminders on my calendar to just keep pinging them. What are you doing about that? What are you doing about that?
Yeah, I also want to work with the oyster,
Good.
in order to create wetlands and regenerative
Yeah.
aquaculture, to deal with a lot of these things, because it's one thing to get it to stop, but then you also have to rehabilitate the ecosystem, right? So, I mean, you know, that's exactly, you know, and it's so great. I mean, you know, storm protection, cleans the water, you know, it's just, you know.
You took my talking points.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
That's okay. But to get to the Oyster Reef project, which I've been talking with some of the members of your science committee already. We don't only monitor for bacteria data, we also monitor environmental health data in Eastchester Bay, and we contract 21 other groups under an EPA-approved quality assurance project plan that we administer. So these data have real power. We submit them to the federal government, we submit them to New York, we submit them to Connecticut. They really get used. But I've been touching base with this Oyster Reef couple of the professors, and they're using these data. We're going to be, Elana was out today doing dissolved oxygen monitoring the bay and the hutch. This Oyster Reef project is using those data. It's much more robust than the city's database. We're out twice a month, very rigorous, same time, same equipment, same procedures. They're going to be using those data to help inform where those oyster reefs might succeed. Specifically, they're looking at our water clarity data, but also our dissolved oxygen data at the bottom, because dissolved oxygen is important for marine life. So we're very, very involved in that oyster project, and I must say that I fully support it, and Save the Sound is going to be supporting it as well. We're really looking forward to seeing some more developed plans, and we would love to have the data be used to help inform it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
By show of hands, how many people here have heard of the Green New Deal? All right. Now keep your hands up if you actually know what is completely in it and what it's all about. Okay, so that's why I brought my friend Marianne Jen from Friends of the Earth. Well, hopefully we can kind of shed some light on some of those issues.
Yeah, so to take us to the bird's eye view of all of these issues, you know, the federal government, unfortunately, they do impact what happens. The Army Corps of Engineers, all of the, you know, it's all connected. So the Green New Deal on the national level, you know, we all know it's a pie in the sky idea, and the idea is that we're trying to put out the most progressive climate policy possible. And I think we're actually achieving that goal in terms of we're seeing, you know, my Friends of the Earth Action electoral hat on, we're seeing 2020 presidential candidates adopting really progressive climate policies, more progressive than members of Congress, which is really exciting and surprising. But the Green New Deal pushes for going 100% renewable by 2030. Just to compare, members of Congress, the Climate Crisis Committee that Pelosi put together is pushing for a goal that's much more moderate. They want to go 100% renewable by 2050. And that's, you know, way later than what scientists are telling us. They're telling us, you know, we have 10 years basically to cut our emissions. And the big progressive part of this deal is that we're trying to mimic the New Deal, make it way more, you know, obviously more equitable, but to push for a national jobs guarantee, because in order to transition our whole energy infrastructure, we need to, that will require a lot of jobs, and it's inherently tied to transforming our whole entire economy. And they're inherently in that, you know, we need to, that will require developing lots of different jobs in terms of energy infrastructure, energy efficiency, you know, construction, and just in the renewable energy sector. And then of course, you know, City Island is an example of a frontline community where there needs specific funding dedicated to communities who are very vulnerable to climate impacts, and also to the communities that were harmed from the fossil fuel industry. So a large part of this deal on the national level and on the New York State level is allocating funding to supply, you know, whatever the funding for the communities need in order to, you know, prepare for resiliency, and also just to do reparations for communities, you know, who have a lot of health issues from fossil fuel projects. Yeah, and on the New York State level, we're really leading the way. Governor Cuomo, begrudgingly, he finally passed the New York State Green New Deal, which is putting us on the map as one of the most progressive states, you know, in the country. Our goal is going 100% renewable by 2040, which is really progressive compared to other states. He committed to building 6,000 megawatts of solar by 2025, 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind by 2035, and just this summer, Governor Cuomo announced 2 offshore wind projects, which is really exciting. And then 35% of funding generated from energy will go towards the frontline communities, you know, like City Island and other communities in New York. that needs, you know, specific funding to deal with preparing for the next storm, and also, you know, public health issues from fossil fuel companies. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Question? Yes.
So this is a question a little bit tangential, and it's about emergency evacuation. I think we desperately need a plan here and for City Island, and I, for one, am willing to be a volunteer to help organize. And I'm sure there are many in this place and others who will come together. We have one bridge, one exit. We have older people living on this island in facilities, and we don't have the transportation, and it could be a very dangerous situation. So what kind of support and help can we get, and where?
Does everyone know, in the event of evacuation and you guys had to be taken out of your homes, where you would go on City Island? Right.
That's how you get there.
And that's the problem, right?
And that only went up at the same.
Exactly. So it's in Lehman College, the other side of the Bronx. Okay. So we're gonna talk about that in a few moments, but I wanted to see if you guys knew. Very good.
Can I ask a question on it?
Yes.
So, is Lehman College the evacuation center for?
Most of the Bronx? Yes.
So how are you getting 2.5 million people?
It'll be a nightmare to get there, everyone at once.
And who developed that plan?
Who developed it, I would think it might have been the Office of Recovery or
Emergency
Yeah, not EM, was it EM? Was it EM as well?
Probably is accountability, you know, quite frankly, I mean, you know.
Actually, the signs only went up after Sandy and evacuations, and
I mean, I'm assuming in any kind of natural disaster, where you're going is where the storm isn't, and with enough warning, you're bailing out and going either north, west, or someplace. You know, I mean, unless my car breaks down or something, given my brothers, I'm not going to shelter.
So I think we should invite EM to come at some point and we'll discuss.
So just so everyone knows, because that's a very good question, and sometimes we have some speakers who are experts on one thing, and sometimes we expect the next group of speakers we're going to have after we do our thing on opioids, but the early next year is going to be with OEM.
Nice.
And we've been in contact with OEM. We wanted to have a CERT team specifically for City Island and get trained out here. We're kind of having a back and forth on that, but they're willing to do some level of training for City Island. So, to be continued, but it is very good.
Because people don't realize the Rockaways didn't evacuate because nobody expected the bay to meet the ocean.
Yeah, you're right.
And they stayed, those people, because they didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You know what, there was nobody that, even the police department wasn't well informed to have those people leave.
All right,
So,
I think.
so you know what, I think those people will leave the next time they say there's a storm, but.
And in 1992, when we had a big storm, I don't even know, it didn't have a name, as far as I can remember, but it's 1992. It was a nor'easter, right, there was no name, but they actually closed the city, the water, I went to the City Island Bridge. The water was at the top of the City Island Bridge, it was covering the parking lot of the seashore. You wouldn't have been able to get off the island anyway. That's how high the water came. I've never seen the water that high. It actually covered the City Island Bridge. They closed the bridge. So what do you do in that case? You track it.
Coming up in a meeting, we're gonna have all
Yeah.
the things that we will insert. Any other questions, anything?
Yeah. Last question before we turn it over to Matt.
We have something, yes.
It's okay, I don't really need the mic, I just wanted to make sure that some of the folks who are having a conversation with my other groups left. The question about could residents volunteer to be citizen scientists? There are other communities that have done not dissimilar things, especially in Flint, because someone has built, and I'm not volunteering to it because I do not know how to make this, an algorithm or a website
where registered citizens could gather and report and contribute to group sourcing the data on a website that would be specifically for this project. People would have to be signed up, registered, you take a picture, you report it, you know what that. But it can be done. It's been done for other pollution issues, and it's been done for coming up with bus routes, during school bus strikes, crowdsourcing. Because if we have enough people on the island that we get coverage, and we have someone, again, not me, don't ask, an algorithm, a basic app, can be very simple, super rudimentary, but we can basically crowdsource the data and just deliver all that big data to whomever can make the best use of it. That's my idea. I don't know how to make it. Thank you for that.
So there are 3 groups working on that, and 2 of them are here. And so we do work with local groups, and local groups will come and deliver. They'll either go right to the schools, or they'll come to us, and we can deliver to the schools the samples that they take. So we sample for Enterococcus, it's a fecal-indicated bacteria. It's the best fecal-indicated bacteria that you can sample for, and we do that all up and down the Hudson. There's a group called New York City Water Trails. That's just a group of total volunteers who come out once a week, and they do samples, and they do them all over New York City. I'm not sure if there's one in this area, but that might be because Save the Sound does so much water quality sampling here, and we do have report cards. Riverkeeper has a report card for all of New York City. Save the Sound has a report card for all of the Sound, and they're online. And they don't show you what the water quality is today, but they show you what the water quality has been every single summer. They show you what it's like after it rains significantly, and so you can get a picture of what that looks like.
Oh, I got this one. This is cool over here. To that point too, our Soundkeeper and actually John Lipscomb, the Riverkeeper, and a lot of other people on the Waterkeeper Alliance are looking into something a little bit broader, where people can take pictures and post things. You know, some of these data that we collect aren't as easy as like fill the bottle, here's the results. I mean, you need a lab, you need to organize things, but we are working on something like you mentioned, where it's very broad, but we also all have our way of aggregating data and showing it. Riverkeeper has a great system and mapping system where you can see data. We're doing the same thing. One of the next steps on the Long Island Sound report card, which I'd encourage people to take as well, this one focuses on open water data, and if you look really close at the grades, you'll notice that all the bays and harbors are cut out. We're currently monitoring in 39 bays and harbors, including East Chester Bay, Little Neck Bay, Bronx River. We're contracting out 21 different groups in this study, and all of those data are going to be aggregated and put online and graded, similar to the beach report that's flowing around. So, you know, data usage, data visualization, that's a big part of what we do, and, you know, stay tuned. We'll have all different types of projects coming out.
It'll come out in 2020, so again, if you would like
Yes.
to be
We're pitching hard, right?
as soon as it comes out, because you'll notice we have a couple more up here, so feel free to grab a report card, but you will see that the colors, grades don't go into the different bays and harbors, since it's a shallow water system. So we will be adding grades though to many of the bays and harbors.
Good.
East Chester Basin.
Yeah, and then another thing I wanted to mention, the beach report's been floating around. Can you hold that up? That's yours, by the way. You can take that. It's the only one I brought, but that's yours. If you do sign up, we don't have as many copies of the beach report. A lot of people are very curious how their beach is doing, and I get it. I was curious how mine was doing.
The Morris and the Water Street Beach are here too. If you want to make a picture.
Yeah,
If you do
we'll
want
take a
copy
photo of
of
that, we'll put it
that-
on the website.
If you do want a copy of that,
And
sign
we'll
up on
email
this
it out.
list and just request it, Long Island Sound Beach Report, and we can send it directly to you. We just have limited copies. And then if you want to take yourself off the email list, don't tell my comms people I said that. You're welcome to just opt out, but email us and say I'd like a copy of the beach report.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
We have hard copies.
any other questions? I think we're good. Again, I want to thank you.
Just one more thing on I know we're talking a lot about what to do to prepare for the next storm, a lot about resiliency and adaptation, that's important. We're way past due to talk about how to, stop emissions from even happening anymore, to stem the root problem, of exacerbating climate change. But unfortunately, we're in 2019, we're still in that place, so I think, obviously we all know how important 2020 is, and I think we have the awesome champion of climate issues, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, obviously here. So I think as we fight for the Green New Deal in 2020, it's really important that we have her back because there's going to be a lot of moves to compromise, and we just we cannot afford to compromise pushing for the strongest climate policy. So we'll look for you, hopefully, to just support Ocasio-Cortez and everyone else to push for the strongest possible deal. Go to her office, do lots of actions. And in New York State level, we need to pay for the New York State Green New Deal. So there's a whole nother policy that's going to be a lot harder to pass. Some kind of carbon pricing. We need a lot of money to pay for transitioning to 100% renewables. So we need your help on the state level to do that also. Thank you.
Great. I'm gonna stand behind you guys so people can see me. Again, my name is Matt Cruz from Community Board 10. Make sure everyone hears me quickly. Some conversations in the front. Let me say in the front. Yeah. Even better. Even better. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. So if I can grab your attention for 10 more minutes, I'll be quick because I know we had a long day, including myself. But again, I'm Matt Cruz from Board 10. I'll give you the spiel in about a couple moments about what a community board actually does and what we're supposed to do, because I know there's some conflicting stories, but I want to be honest and see what we can and cannot do for all of you. However, in keeping with tonight's panel, I brought in those 6 boxes emergency go bags. Does anyone have any idea what those are?
Yeah, it's what you need if you have to vote.
If you have, in the event you have to vacate your home, you can't go back tomorrow or the next day. You have all those items in your book bag, nearest the exit that you're leaving from. You pick it up and go. These are the times when you don't have a wallet, you can't get to your purse, you can't grab your phone, but you have all those, a notebook, a transistor radio in case there's no electricity, you can't even charge your phones are dead. They have a blanket, a poncho if it's raining and you have to get out of here. Those things are in this black book bag. Now I am going to be honest with all of you. Not yet, hold on. Not yet. I don't think everyone can get one. So we have to determine who really wants one and who's going to take it back home and create them for themselves. Perfect. But I want to show you what the contents inside of it are. Does anyone know why a notebook's inside of it? Your contact list of loved ones or friends. And secondly, insurance. But third, medication you might need that you can give to emergency response. I need this at a certain time. Would you be able to give it to me because I wasn't able to grab it from my kitchen counter? That's important.
24 hours a day.
There's a flashlight in here with batteries, so you guys don't have to purchase them. However, this is not for your household. This is not to take it out of this book bag. This is for all of you to leave it nearest the exit that you're leaving from. Additionally, you're to make copies of all of your IDs and children or grandchildren's IDs and keep them in here. No folders, just put the papers and copies inside. You don't want to make this too heavy. You don't want this to be a hindrance as you're exiting. You want to keep it as light as possible. I had an event on City Island in Pilot Cove actually this morning, and one of my staff members told a member of the public, you should put an extra pair of underwear inside here as well. In the event you can't take a shower, it might be helpful to have one here. And that's light material as well, I would presume. So keep this inside. In addition, and this one's not here, just have to make sure I can get, but there's all this small pocket radio. This is very valuable. I know we don't have these in our homes like we used to because we rely on our cell phones, our computers, our laptops. But this is crucial when there isn't electricity. This is how the news gets to us. It'll be through this radio. So again, this is not for us to take in our backyard. This is to keep in this backpack as long as possible.
Has a battery?
Yes, everything's inside.
So you should check that battery like once a year.
Absolutely. So I only have.
Between the battery and the unit so it doesn't go off.
They make those radios with wind-ups too.
Yeah, they do. So I only have about 30, give or take 30. So you guys have to figure out who really wants one. one per household, that's the rule as well, and you have to sign a little permission slip, excuse me. I'm exhausted. You have to sign our permission slip, knowing that you're a resident. You're a resident of Community Board 10, which represents what neighborhoods?
Pelham Bay.
A couple others. So one more. Westchester Square. Everyone forgets Westchester Square, but yes, it's ours. Absolutely. And someone said it is a neighborhood. But in any event, I have those to hand out to 30 households. That's all I have. I may have a few more tomorrow in my office. If you really do want one bad and you're not able to get one tonight, I'll make sure I can try to get one tomorrow morning for all of them. For those who really do want one, and I have enough in my office. Are we cool? Yeah. All right, so at the end of the meeting, we're all gonna come in a nice line, right? You're gonna sign that you want one, and I'm gonna give you a nice black book bag, okay? Awesome, and it comes with all the materials I mentioned already inside of it. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There should be like 5 videos for each. Okay, and the last, yes, I'll wait a second. And the last item, because I know we're all getting antsy to leave. The last item is I want to remind you guys what community boards do. No, we don't give money, we have none actually. I use the money actually to pay my staff. That's what most of the money is used for. But we do what you guys want us to do. Now, for a long time, I'm not sure what happened, but we lost a lot of relationships with our civics and community associations. But you guys direct us on what you guys want. And the wrinkle is that now that data is so readily available, you guys can't tell me to tell the city, hey, I want this on City Island, without having the data to prove it. And that information is always available to us, and we have to open up something, go to the library, work on it together. Those are things we have to do to make sure we get what we think we deserve from the city. Now that leads me to my next point. I think John mentioned it. Every year the community board has a district needs statement. And John used the phrase that I often use to describe it. It's a wish list. So every now and then we do get an item or two that the mayor says, hey, you're right, here's the money for it. Then it becomes when the city can spend it and we'll get it, but that's another conversation. But there's some items you guys mentioned, like resiliency studies, things you guys want, particularly for City Island. I heard someone mention, why is there flooding on streets? There could be no sidewalks. That's also a problem why there's some flooding in our communities, no sidewalks, and every homeowner is supposed to have one, right? We know that. But in any event, if you have items that you guys like to see, capital projects, meaning over $35,000 that a city agency can spend towards, those are things I need to know. That list is due October 31st. I'm not sure if City Island receives the penny pincher column. Do you guys, okay. So that's why I advertise most of the things that, that's required of me too for the city. The penny pincher, the City Island Current, we all read that, right? Yeah. I'm sure everybody's been there a couple times, I'm not sure. But in any event, an example of those requests are, one is an expense item is having more resources for the Parks Department for tree pruning. Or to back up Marianne and get more resources for her staff in Pelham Bay Park. To keep it as beautiful as it always is, right Marianne? That's right. And a capital project is when PS 175 needs an auditorium renovation or air conditioning, something to make the school facility friendly to our students and to our teachers alike. So those things I want you guys to start thinking about. You have until October 31st to get me those items. And before I take any questions, I'm going to, of course, get ready to start giving out some of the bags. Again, we're going to do it calmly. We're not going to push or elbow anybody. I only have 30. I may have more tomorrow morning. I might. If Santa's kind enough to me, we'll see. But we're going to do it kindly and as graciously as possible before we get those book bags. And again, these are not the end-all be-all. The purpose is to personalize it. So write in that notebook loved ones' phone numbers and addresses, medication you or your children or someone in your household might need.
And your pets.
Your pets as well, medication they might need, their names, where to send them to if you can't come back to your house. That's important. As well as, don't use the batteries that are inside them. That is for when you need to get out quickly. Not any weather-related event, but it could be as simple as a gas leak. Gas leaks you have to evacuate, and you have to get out quickly. So you grab that book bag nearest the door that you're exiting, before you even put on your sweater or what have you. You have to grab that book bag and go. I'm sure if the Red Cross or any emergency responder will have clothing for you guys to put on, if the weather permits it, of course, if it's cold or what have you. Without further ado, and before I listen to all your complaints, which I'm here to do as well, are there any questions about some of the items I just mentioned? Okay, good. Oh, yes, sure.
What wish list items to contribute, how can we get that information to you?
Sure, I bought hundreds, I believe, of business cards that I'll leave with, on this table, but Mr. Doyle, your fearless leader, will also get in contact with me, but by email, preferably.
Well, we have some community board 10 members on City Island.
Of course, and
Did
who,
you
and
mention who they are?
No, that's a question for you guys. Who are the City Island Community Board members?
Peter Cantillo.
Okay, that's one.
Peter Cantillo.
Peter Cantillo, number two, who was a former district manager at one point. Tom Smith is third, yes. Is there any more? I don't think so either.
Jerry Landy.
Jerry Landy, who lives on the City Island. Yes, it's true. So, but I got a question for you guys, and I get this all the time. Are they your reps from City Island?
No.
Did you hear what John said?
He said no.
Right, they're not. They represent Community Board 10. They do not represent just City Island. They have a say on co-op city matters just as much as City Island, and Westchester Square, and Thurrock's Neck, Pelham Bay. So yes, we can go to them. Yes, they can commit a vote to you. However, they have to keep in mind what the district might want, or need, or might not want, or might not need. Cool? So don't beat them up too bad when you guys see them in the supermarkets for bad votes they take, right? Any other questions?
Okay. Guys, before we break for the night, if you filled out one of these, get it to me. I take these very seriously. We do get you answers to the questions you have. Thank you.
Was that like an intake form?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like an intake form. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Give a round of applause to our panel. They were great. They were amazing. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.